This content is brought to you in association with my buddies over at Jam Jam Cards UK. You can find the links to the eBay store and the Facebook page in the description.
Hi guys, it's Joe here from Rufioh. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time here, welcome aboard. You should definitely hit subscribe and the notification bell before we go any further and you realise how fucking atrocious this content is. If this is not your first time on the channel, welcome back, you absolute fucking loser. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the channel, you may notice the sound a little bit different. It's got a little bit of a cold going on. Also, that everything looks a little bit weird and slightly different, and hopefully a little bit better. I've actually just got a brand new phone, which seems to be infinitely better than the actual webcam that I bought that was dedicated for this kind of stuff. So I'm going to try it out and see how it gets on. It seems to deal with low lighting a lot better, which is an important factor because the lighting in this room is fucking garbage. Now, for today's video, we're going to be taking a look at my Zoodiac Tri-Brigade Deck Profile. Probably the last one that you'll see of it, because hopefully the deck gets fucking yeeted on the list and I don't have to play it anymore. Now, that may seem counterintuitive. Why would I want my deck to get hit? Well, I'm fucking bored of it, and there's no real excuse to play anything else at the moment. So if it gets hit, I kind of get a out-of-jail-free card, I guess. So we're going to go through for those of you who are still interested in playing the deck, or for those of you who are hoping that we have some reprints around the corner and you can pick it up for yourself. Now, before we do push ahead and get stuck into the actual profile itself, a big shout out to Jam Jam Cards UK. They're the channel sponsors and they do hook me up with all of the cards I use. Now, if you do want to get a nice discount on their eBay store, there is a link in the description. And if you use my code Rufioh15, you'll get 15% discount on your cards. For those of you who are interested, and I do occasionally get questions about this, about signed cards, that can also be arranged as well. You just need to reach out to the guys when you purchase, let them know what you want. You'll have to wait a little bit longer because they have to meet me for me to be able to sign them, which is most weekends or at least during the week, and you'll be able to get them on their merry way. But anyway, enough nonsense from me. Let's get stuck into the video. Okay, so it's worth noting that a few of the changes that have been made today are basically just for today's locals. In fact, one in particular has been done. But the majority of this is changes that I've made over the last few weeks based on my locals. So, of course, a few of these things would not necessarily be relevant to where you're playing. However, I think for the most part, the majority of them could certainly be applied to the majority of places you would play. Hopefully, that made sense. Anyway, so we're going to get stuck into the profile. We're not going to waffle on too much. So we've got a single copy of Rapier. It's Rapier, and 2 copies of Thoroughblade. That makes up our Zoodiac package, of course, for the deck. Just the 3 months is absolutely fine. I've seen some people play Ram. Honestly, I think 2 Thoroughblade works absolutely perfectly. So I quite like this ratio, but not everyone is fond of it. Onto our Tri-Brigade lineup, we've got triple copies of Fractal. It's Fractal, you need to play 3 of it, no question of that. Yeah, pretty much self-explanatory. Much the same for Kit, much the same for Nerval. And then finally, 2 copies of Keras. Absolutely sufficient. You don't need more than that. Honestly, these are like the perfect numbers. Sometimes I kind of wish I had the 3rd Keras, but you never really want to see it in your hand. You kind of just want to be able to search it. It's just okay for like grinds, but that's about where it ends. Hand traps, we have triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. And then triple copies of Effect Veiler. So Ash Blossom kind of just hits, well, basically everything in some capacity. There's very few decks it doesn't hurt, at least in some way. It absolutely just auto-wins rogue matches, which can actually be probably the most tricky matchups for this deck. And then Effect Veiler is just insane, particularly in the mirror as well. But again, a lot of decks will just lose to this if it's on their normal summon. There's times where I really don't want it to be in here, but most of the time it's good. Now onto our spell lineup here, we've got triple copies of Tenki. Yeah, if you've read the card, it pretty much explains itself. Triple copies of Desires, Consistency Boost, and of course with this particular version, we need to play Desires. Some will play Prosperity in other particular builds, usually in the Rescue Cat build and stuff like that, but in this one, we need Desires, we need those extra deck slots to stay intact. 2 copies of Forbidden Chalice. So Forbidden Chalice was at 3. I've actually cut one of them down just for today, actually, just to try out. This card's absolutely busted, especially in the mirror match. It's insane. One of the things I found with this deck was that a lot of the time what I wanted to do was make my opening board and just set a bunch of stuff that was kind of useful most of the time. This just doubles up as like an extra copy of Veiler or Imperm, but there's little things like niche interactions like damage step. You can obviously make changes because it buffs attack, and things like that. There's like weird interactions where this becomes insane, and honestly every single game that I've seen it, I've always been incredibly grateful, and I definitely wouldn't cut it again. Originally, I had Triple Tactics Talent in here. I actually cut that 4 triple copies of this, and then again, I've cut the 3rd copy of this for something else, but again, just for today only, I would actually recommend running the 3 copies of Chalice. And for those of you who have budget for any players, of course, that's a massive boost too. We got a single copy of Barrage because, yeah, we're playing Zoodiacs. A single copy of Harpies Feather Dust. So this was what the 3rd Chalice came out for. I wanted to just try it out and see how I got on. There's a lot of back row heavy decks in my my locals. It's also really, really good in the mirror match. And just things like that. I only really saw it like maybe once today, and the one time it came up, it was bonkers. So logically, it sounds okay, but I don't know how good it is in reality. And then a single copy of Call by the Grave. This card needs to be at more than 1, but whilst it's a 1, we're going to play 1 copy. Triple copies of Revolt. This is, of course, our trap section here. Triple copies of Revolt, pretty much self-explanatory again, in my opinion. You need to play this at 3, and if it goes to less than 3, the deck is more or less unplayable at this kind of level. Triple copies of Impermanence, kind of a pseudo hand trap, of course. It's good going first or second because you can set it, of course, if you go first, which is kind of nice. Kind of goes back to that whole I just want to do my set on my opening board and just set a load of back row. This helps you get there. Triple copies of Strike. This has been one of the best additions I've made to the deck in absolutely ages. Highly recommend playing this. Would definitely not recommend not playing it. It's just Strike. It's so good. Absolutely 100% need to play it. And a single copy of Imperial Order. This card's broken, needs to be banned, but while it's here, we're going to use it. And that does round off our main deck. Let's move on to the extra deck. So mandatory tokens, field center sort of thing. We don't really care that much about those. So our Tri-Brigade ones we'll start off with. So we've got Brum in here. Of course, just the 1 copy is perfectly sufficient. 2 copies of Ferrigit. You don't need more than 2. Having 3rd would just be luxury, but you just don't need it. A single copy of Rugal is absolutely perfect. And 2 copies of Shurag. I think in the builds where you want to banish extra deck monsters, you want the 3rd copy of this, but I think in the Zoodiac build, just 2 is perfectly fine. Onto our non-Tri-Brigade stuff, we've got 1 copy of Almirage. It's just there to get stuff off your board. You know how often, if you've played this deck, that you need this card just to clear a Tri-Brigade off the field and try and get into other plays, because otherwise you just lose. We've got the Doom Eagle with the stupid name. This kind of has weird games where it comes up, but if nothing else, it just becomes a massive beat stick. But of course, it's also a generic Link 3 that you can get into using their effects. A single copy of Appaloosa. It's Appaloosa. It's going to be one of your main goes to. Ancient Warriors Oath, Double Dragon Lords. It's Double Dragon Lords. And Access Code Talker is Access Code Talker. We then have our Zoodiac package, Tiger Mortar, Chakanine, Borbo, and then of course, finally, our Zeus. This package works absolutely fine. Primarily, you only ever really make these 2 if you're going to do any kind of Zoodiac plays. This doesn't really come up all that often. But Chakanine, of course, can get you, if you open a zoo and you don't want to go into Zeus straight away, you can make a Freakling too using this, and then especially if you open Rat Pier and stuff like that. And then Borbo, of course, is for the free direct attack. And then, of course, Zeus is Zeus. It's the reason we even play the package anyway. And that, of course, is our extra deck. Let's move on to the side deck. I don't think there's all that much to talk about here, but let's just cover it anyway. So we've got a single copy of Pankratops. I think this is like mandatory in every side deck. I don't know why you wouldn't play it. 2 copies of Nibiru. Yes, mixed rarity. I might be sponsored. They don't like me that much. Genuinely, though, this is all they had. I don't want to slate them that badly. Also, it upsets people a little bit more if they get nibbed by a gold rare rather than a nice secret rare or an ulti. So there's that kind of benefit as well. Triple copies of Droll and Lockbird. There's some decks that just auto-lose to this, and you need to have it in there. We've got triple copies of Twin Twisters because back row decks are absolutely bullshit. These could be kind of like Cosmic Cyclones as well, but I think honestly the amount of back row removal is better than specifically very good back row removal at the moment. I think you just need the extra numbers, and being able to get 2 for the price of 1 always seems good. Triple copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance. It doesn't come up an awful lot, but when it does, it's really, really strong. There's some decks that just need to be able to yeet all their spells straight away. On the off chance you play something like a Pendulum deck, it's kind of good against that sort of thing. But honestly, this kind of just does the same thing as Imperial Order a lot of the time. Set up your board, set this up, flip it in standby phase, GG. 2 copies of Solemn Judgment. I love this card. I really wish I had the space for the third, but I can't justify cutting anything for it. Love this card, love this card. And then finally, our red reboot. Kind of mandatory, in my opinion, in the sideboard at least. For the mirror match, it's absolutely insane. Against stupid back row heavy decks, it's really, really good for those as well. Again, just one of those cards that even if you end up going first or you get forced to go first, expecting to go second, you can always just set it and benefit from it that way. And then Solemn Judgment is just another one of those cards, of course, that backs that whole go first, set up an unbreakable board, win the game. And that is it for today's deck profile. You don't get any of the fancy pictures at the end. Of course, big shout out to the channel sponsors, Jam Cards UK, for giving me the hookup with the cards, even if they are in weird rarities. If you do want to get your hands again on some cheap singles, use the link in the description. Go ahead and enter Rufioh 15. You'll get some discount off the store. Again, hopefully we're going to see something on the ban list that lets us play something different. The deck will still be playable. They're not going to completely cripple it. And I think even if they hit Revolt, I'll just try something different. But until then, the deck is here to stay, and it is definitely the best deck of the format. So until then, you should just enjoy it while it lasts. Again, if you haven't already, you should definitely hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.